Time to address a few MoT issues on the Princess. It is exempt, but I'd like somebody else to just have a look over everything, check it's okay. Things like testing the brakes, I can't do that myself at home, and it would just be nice to have a more professional eye cast over the car. I can't see anything that immediately jumps out as being problematic, but obviously because I decided to book the MoT on a bit of a whim today, it did decide to, well, do a Princess. This side, passenger wheel arch, only bodywork of concern for me. I know the whole car's kind of tatty, but there's a couple of very small holes that are about the same size as the old trim holes. I'm just going to pop some tape over those for now. I am coming back and doing that this year. That's not why I'm here. On the drive back from the garage, I noticed this side repeater, you know when you catch a reflection in something and something's not working, had stopped working, and that's because the bulb inside had just got all corroded. Possibly from that flood I ended up driving through earlier this year. All the lights on the back are working, as they should, including my auxiliaries, but the fog light, for whatever reason, has decided that it's gone on strike. So hopefully it's just a bulb. I can't see anything wrong with the wiring. It could also be the switches. They're a terrible design on this car. We shall see. Up front, I have coloured bulb indicators in here because of the clear lenses, and I noticed this one looked very pale. Let me show you. I've got a feeling that might look not orange enough on the MoT. I've bought some new ones. The bulb that's in there is actually quite faded, so that's all that will be. The horn had stopped working. Typically, you find out your horn's not working when you need it. Somebody deciding to stop and change direction right in front of me with no indicators or warning, yeah. All that ended up happening there is the connectors on the bottom of the compressor here were just a little bit fuzzy, so a wiggle and a clean, and we're good to go on that again. See? No worries. So, I know all of my telltales and everything in here work. The one that was a bit of a nuisance is the indicator telltale here. Had fallen out again. It keeps doing this. So I had to reach in under the dash to do that. However, on the drive back from the garage when I booked this in, I was doing what I thought was 30 and my speedo said that's how fast I'm going. That's because the plastic connector that holds the speedo cable to the back of the binnacle has snapped. Again. When I got the car, that part was snapped, and they'd done it with tape, so it worked sometimes. I replaced it, it was fine for a while, and I think the first time I broke it, when I was doing a lot of work behind the dashboard. This time, I just drove home, and it broke. And I can feel it's broken, I can feel it's the plastic part that's broken, so I have to see if I've got one in stock. If not, I'll have to order one. I don't think that's an MoT issue, so I can always stick the TomTom in there, but I'm hoping I've got one in, and I can just replace it. I don't like doing it though, it's a horrible job. I don't want to take the dashboard out to do it, but you have to reach up under here through all of this stuff and try and get in, so it's probably one of my least favourite jobs. It's not so bad in the engine bay side, you can see it comes out here. Speedo cable's here, it comes down here, down into the drive just there. It's fairly easy to remove, but it's very difficult to put back in. But yeah, everything seems okay at the moment, so I'm going to whiz through these jobs and get everything working properly again. Another issue, which I wasn't aware of till doing a lights check just now, because last time I checked everything it was fine, is the fog light switch. I've managed to get it to work once, and now it won't work. The fuse is good, the bulb is good, the The problem is the connector on the back of these switches and these switches themselves can be a little bit finicky. For example, the heated rear screen is sometimes a bit finicky, and at the moment it's working perfectly normally, because of course it is. Hazard lights again, that's sometimes finicky, and now it's on camera, it's fine. Well, let's see if the fog light likes being on camera. It does not. Because what should happen is this light here should light up. And it's not. I hate this dashboard so much, because to try and fix this is almost impossible. You have to take this apart to get to the connectors to get everything to connect, and then you can get it working, put everything back in, and it doesn't work again. I have been here before with these switches. They drive me nuts. They're nice to use, nice big chunky switches, I like that, but they are not reliable at all. That one is lit because my handbrake's on, which is normal. But I've taken the bulb out the holder. You can see the headlights are on, which you need for the fog light to be on, but we've got nothing there. The wiring itself, it doesn't look like much, but it's fine. I am going to make some boxes to cover this eventually, but I haven't seen anything wrong with any of these connections in here. What a nuisance. That's funny with the indicators. These were replaced in a pair. This is the one that shows very pale, and it's faded quite a bit, like from where my fingernail is there up. It's very faded. And this one was done at the same time from the same pack, and it's perfectly fine. They both work, it's just not very orange. So I'll put a fresh pair in, but I'll keep these in my spares in case I need one in an emergency. Or I won't, because I've fallen foul of this issue again. They look like the same type of pins in the packet, and they're not. So I can't fit these new ones, so plan B. So what was plan B then? It's very simple. These are nicely modular. You can slide the lenses out. And I never throw anything away, so I kept the amber ones. Problem solved for now. It'll at least do for the MoT, and when I get some proper amber bulbs, I'll swap them back again. It's not a big problem. Indisputably orange. Of course the side repeater's okay too. Next job, that other side repeater. Let's hope a new bulb gets that working. Slight problem on this side. It looks like this bulb holder in here is well past its prime. I cannot get a connection at all. Now, I can cheat. This car is old enough that it doesn't need side repeaters. So I can just unplug these and put some tape over the hole, or a grommet or whatever, and that's perfectly legal. I'd like to fix it properly, but I think for the MoT that will be adequate. Because all you do is you disconnect these plugs here, and then you don't have side repeaters. The car doesn't do the very fast flash because it's not got them thing. So that's going to be the easiest option. I think I'm going to go for that because I don't know where my spare side repeaters are, and well, it could be back there somewhere. I don't know. One of the hiccups for the MoT was the old speedo cable there broke, which was less than ideal. And what's happened is the end of the plastic connector here has just shattered. This will be the second cable I've replaced. No, this will be the third cable I've replaced. This is the second one that's done it in my ownership. When I got the car, this had broken and somebody had repaired it with tape, which sort of worked, but not for very long. Trying to get a replacement is difficult. The usual listings on eBay don't list one for this car. They list it for the Mark 1 for the 1800 engine. So took a chance and ordered one. The connector on this end is the same. The only difference is this has a square drive and this has sort of an oval drive to it. I don't think it's going to be a problem because as far as I know, the 1800 and the 1700 both use the same gearbox. And since that's the gearbox end, I think that will be okay. At this end, it's a different kind of plastic. It's not this hard plastic. It's slightly softer feeling, so that might be less prone to shattering, which would be good. And that is the same fitting as it is on the original. It's not a fun job to fit. I can't really show you how it's done in the dashboard because I can't get the camera in, it's done blind. But basically you push this onto the back of this onto the back of the instrument, and that little thing there, you push that down to release, and then you thread it all the way into the engine bay, and this screws into the gearbox. This end I can show you. Let's pop the bonnet and get this in. Here we are in the engine bay. That grommet there is where the cable goes into the car. I'm probably going to have to remove that, thread it onto the cable, push the cable through and then put it back in the hole. You know. Down here you can see there is where it screws onto the gearbox, and access is just terrible. The hole you can see just there in the engine mount is where you have to thread the cable through to get to the connector on the gearbox. But although it looks like there's a fairly straight route here, when you try and get your hands in, the oil filter is kind of in the way. This heat exchanger pipe's in the way. The heater hoses are in the way. This little plastic tab here, which is something to do with timing and setting it, tries to cut the back of your hand open. It's not a fun job. Again, it's going to be difficult for me to set the camera up to show you this as I'm doing it. So if I can, I'll record that. If I can't, obviously, I'll bring you back when I'm done. You'll have to forgive shaky cam a little bit here. Let me show you what's involved in threading this through. You've got the little connector there, which is a screw fit, and the cable coming up here through the engine mount. Because if you don't go through the engine mount, you don't have a nice clean route. Then, to finally tighten, you have to get in. I'm using some channel locks here. You need to get in with a tool to get on there, and then I've already tightened it so I shan't do it on camera, but you just tighten it that way. This will probably leak. They normally do. Sometimes you have to put an O-ring in to stop it doing that. Sometimes you don't, so I have to connect it, tighten it up, test drive the car. If it leaks, take it off, put an O-ring in, put it back on. If it doesn't leak, leave it alone. Now that's in, the next job is figuring out the best route for the cable. When you come up here, it wants to go this side, but of course you've got the exhaust manifold here, you've got the pipes down there, you don't want it touching those. You also don't want the cable chafing on anything, so I have to feed it under here, back across behind the air filter, and through the bulkhead. Then it's usually just a case of simply plugging it in, but when you plug it in, it's very easy to pull out the telltale lights on the back of the dashboard, which you can't see, and then you have to find them and plug them back in again. It's... yeah. I really hope this doesn't break, and I really hope it works, because I do not enjoy this job. Threaded the grommet on and it's split. I'll use a little bit of super glue, see if I can get that back in its proper shape. when you're inside the car, if you're trying to figure out where the cable's coming through from outside, it's sort of in line with this side of the steering wheel. You'd think the hole would be over here, where it needs to be, but it's not. So I've finagled this out of its hole, but I now need to get it through. I now need to get it through the steering column bracket around here to get it up into the back of the middle cluster there. It's not fun. The wiring under here, with the exception of the loom tape there, this is how it is from the factory. I know there is a trim you can put on here, but yeah, this is just how they are. It's not great. But you can see now why I can't really show you how this is done. I literally can't. And I don't want to take the dashboard out to do it. It doesn't really help me. It gives me a lot more work and the job doesn't get any easier. I am laid in the footwell at the moment. You can see how I've fed the cable through the side of this bracket, which is the pedal box, up to where the speedo unit is. It plugs straight in, clips in place. You'll have to excuse any weird breathing noises. This is the least comfortable place I can be. Yeah, it's in. Hopefully I don't have to remove that again. I'm going to take it for a test run, see if this works, and when I get back I'll be able to see if it leaks. Fingers crossed that it does work and it doesn't leak. The good news is, it works. I'm on the driveway here, so I won't be able to go very fast, but just to demonstrate. Obviously, can't do that on the open road. So that's that issue out the way. Let's see if it's leaking. Nope, that looks nice and dry down there. That's one job down. The other issue I need to sort for the MoT is the fog light switch. I do not feel like folding myself up in the footwell at the moment, so I'm going to save that for another day. This ended up being quite an odd fix, but something this car's done before with other wiring. Now, for a little bit of history on this dashboard is entirely rewired when it comes to the instrument clusters. The printed circuit board behind was broken. I did not have a good spare, so a friend of mine manually rewired it like you would a kit car, and that side of things became very stable, very secure, good times. The switch block here, however, couldn't really be rewired because the connectors that are used are specific, and there wasn't really anything wrong with it other than what was wrong from the factory, which is that the connectors, they're not the best. They work most of the time, but they don't keep damp out. So if the car's stood for a while, sometimes you have to wiggle the switches quite a bit to get them going again. It's a bit of a nuisance. It's very fragile, it's prone to falling apart. If you fiddle with it too much, it pops out the dash sometimes. This is just standard British Leyland stuff. The standard 70s car stuff, to be fair. However, I have managed to fix it. So, ignition on. You might just be able to hear the fuel pump running. 2 clicks down for the headlights. And now the fog light works. You can see the light there coming on and off like it should. So what was wrong? That's a very good question. I'm not entirely sure. It's something to do with this fused wire here. This is factory as far as I can tell. The fuse inside there is a glass fuse. It's perfectly fine. I took it out, checked it, put it back in, no joy. I Completely dismantled this switch, cleaned out the grease, put fresh grease in it, still no joy. Tested the switch, had continuity when I should, didn't have continuity when I shouldn't. So the switch tested okay, the bulb inside the switch tested okay. As I was starting to move everything to put it back, one of the wires roots around something in the dashboard. Couldn't tell you what, I'd have to pull the dashboard out to find out. But as I was moving everything, it started working. Which means somewhere between that switch and the main harness, there's a not great connection. This doesn't surprise me. I had the same issue with the indicators for a very long time, and that turned out to be an earth point. Once that was resecured, the indicator problem went away. The fog light switch playing up like this, it's something you live with these older cars. It's not something that I think is particularly dangerous in this instance. The wiring in this car is actually in pretty good shape. It's just a lot of the connectors are old and plastic, and the fit is a bit sloppy on them. And I think that's all it is. I think somewhere there's two pieces that most of the time are connected and perfectly fine, and just recently they've just jiggled ever so slightly out of position and weren't quite making enough of a connection. Now I've jiggled things, they're making a good connection again. That's just how it is. On the plus side, this now means the one thing that was stopping me putting the car in for an MOT is fixed. So I'm happy about that. And on reflection, I've decided to do a few more smaller jobs around the car. They're not vital for the MOT, but it would be nice if they were just a little bit tidier, just for presenting the car. Here's the acid test. I've got everything back in, cut my hand open on a little bracket that's under there that I can't remove. So ignition on, headlights on, fog light on, and everything on here is now working like it should. So you've got, this is to tell you the handbrake's on, this is to tell you the fog light's on, which only comes on if your headlights are on. For the headlights you don't have a telltale there, you have one over here and you can just see the glow on the dials here. So you also have a rheostat, so you can turn those right down if you want to. Hazard light obviously is here, and your heated rear screen. Ah yes, this is what I mean. The connection on these is, that's me leaning on the wipers, the connection on these is not great, and that's just how they are. There's nothing wrong with them, that's just how these cars are. It's one of the things you live with them. At least now everything that should be working on here is working. Something I do need to investigate at some point is why the seatbelt warning light no longer works. I suspect it's the buttons in the seats, but it could also be the connectors, it could be the bulb in there, it could be anything, I don't know. I need to take this out because this here no longer works, because the rod that connects this piece to the flap that blocks or opens the fans has come off again. This car has always done that for the 10 years I've owned it. Not an MOT issue, just a bit of a nuisance. And eventually I'll fit a radio back in here. I've just not wanted to chop up that blanking plate.